Earlier, I described astral projection as a sort of breaking free from the shell, like a chick being born and getting out of the shell by overcoming the ego, or rather overcoming the control of the ego. Not saying that the ego vanishes or anything. I think that's kind of a delusion. People who believe the ego vanishes seem to become more egotistical, which is kind of ironic. And I think that something that's sort of important to talk about as a prerequisite to astral projection is to put people in the place of understanding where they are relative to the universe. So I thought maybe talking about the structure of reality as I understand it is a good idea. And I think it's important to also mention that, like, these are things as they are my ideas. I'm trying to benefit you by pointing you in the right direction. And that does not mean that by listening to me you will gain some sort of knowledge. In fact, I don't believe that anyone gains any knowledge through listening. They merely recognize what they already understand, and perhaps it matures. So the real knowledge is gained through experience and through moving in the right direction. If I point in a direction and you follow that path, and you find yourself deeper in some aspect, that's knowledge gained. So that's the hope that I have. Whether or not someone does progress is not up to me. So I'm mostly focused on communicating what I understand so that people can hopefully apply it. The sort of unfortunate thing that we have in modern era is very little applied knowledge. It seems like most knowledge that exists today is speculative knowledge, meaning I can give you an instruction manual to, say, build a house, and you believe that you know how to build a house, but you don't go and you don't build a house because you believe about it. And then you take that belief and you talk about it and you act as if you know how to build a house, and you tell your friends you know how to build a house, but you don't know how to build a house. It's all a facade. And the actual building is the knowledge. And this is how religions form, how dogmatic religions form, is everyone believes that they know how to build a house and they don't know how to build a house. So astral projection and out-of-body experience is supposed to restore the understanding of how to build a house. Through the practice, not through some sort of theoretical mental exercise, but through the practice. And so when considering what to tell people when they get into astral projection, well, first of all, there's a couple of things. Most things I'm going to tell you in preparation are really unnecessary, in the sense that you're going to get into it if you're drawn to it, regardless of whether I say anything. You just may have more access to it because I point you in the right direction, and so you'll spend less time wasting. And some people perhaps would have wasted their entire life not getting into it and would only encounter it at death. And so the hope is that you prepare people better for an understanding of the world and reality as it is, so that people are not under a false impression for their entire life about what life is. So I'm going to start with a tour of the universe. We're going to zoom out a lot. And I consider drawing this one out, as I've done for others, and perhaps someday I will. But to be honest, it is so simple that I figured it would be easier to leave it as a description so that people do not feel the need to analyze some sort of a diagram. It's much easier to just listen. And it's easier for me too. So, to put it very simply, I've talked about how the soul has a spherical component to it, a nature of the sphere, an eternal, irrational power to it, and about how from that emerges a spiritual body, a form, a projection of nature, a manifestation of sorts, which allows you to travel the world, to incarnate through lowering that energy into a body, and to engage in the spiritual world in both the divine realms and eternal ones and the mortal ones, of which you are engaged with right now in the mortal world. And I want to point out that we often think of the world as being very complicated, in the same way that you may look at an image and think it's very complicated, but at the root it's just a bunch of pixels. And pixels are 3 colors. And that's very simple, but we see complexity in it. Well, the universe is essentially just a bunch of spheres, to be perfectly blunt. Sacred geometry has always been based on different overlapping spheres, and you should take that seriously. So if the soul fundamentally has a spherical component to it, in the sense that its nature is spherical, in the sense that its nature is irrational, and therefore the divine lives through it, then the universe is, in its same sense, spherical. The difference between a soul and a universe is that a soul is the fundamental component, meaning there are no other spheres independently living inside of it. But a universe is a container in which many souls exist inside of, that it itself has the nature of impressed upon it. That does not mean it has to be a perfect sphere. But if you ever wanted to create a universe, the instruction manual for creating a universe would be to leave this one through a spiritual body, or as some traditions call the spiritual vehicle. You can interpret that as you would, but maybe it's a good way to communicate the idea that one can actually sort of take their spaceship out of the universe. And after you have done so, because you have ascended through spiritual development to the point where you're capable of this, you're now no longer in a universe. You are in a space which I'm going to refer to as either the beyond or the unknown, which both are probably equally useful. And once you arrive there, what you want to do is fashion what we might maybe initially call some sort of a blueprint or a thought form or a manifestation. And mind you, you're in a world without laws. If you've exited the universe and exited all universes, you are in a place without laws. You are the law. So creation is as simple as the exercise of the will, etc., and energy. You can get the idea. And so you form it with your hands, so to speak, and with your intention, your will, your energy, your nature. And then voila, you have a universe. But it's not a universe yet because no one exists inside of it. So now you must convince souls that your universe is worth existing inside of. And it should attract that based on nature. And this is not, you may think of this as some sort of mechanical thing where you go around with pamphlets or some shit. But I would make the claim that you've entered the irrational realm that does not necessarily follow the laws of physics, and so the mechanics by which this occurs or emerges is really unimportant. What's more important is the intention, I suppose, and the energy. And then voila, you've created a universe. Now, that doesn't mean it's a good universe. It may be a universe that you like, but no one else likes. And in that case, it's not a universe yet. It is the potential for a universe. But if you do this same process inside of a universe and not on the outside of it, you'll procure something that's called a realm. And a realm is a spiritual dimension that is separate from the greater spiritual dimensions that are based in the physical universe or in the spiritual component, the layers of the universe. But it is independent of those laws. But it adopts the energy of the universe and lives inside of it. And spiritual realms are very common amongst, especially religions, where the belief systems that people adopt produce a spiritual counterpart, or perhaps you call it a reflection or a manifestation. And then that spiritual counterpart attempts to expand its influence. And this is how religions are created, and this is how some gods are created, and this is how, you can go on and on. Though gods can get more complicated because usually there's souls that have elevated to a certain point. But these mechanics apply, and you need to understand that you are a soul choosing to be in a universe, or you are a soul who has found yourself in a universe because of circumstance. Perhaps you emerged there. This may be your inception. Or it may be your recreation. Or it may be that you were not mature enough to be aware, and so you wandered into it. But regardless of what may be the reason you're here, you are in fact here, and so you are made out of the nature of this place to some degree as you are participating in it. And as a participant in the universe, you need to understand that it is clearly an environment in which you can exist. And even though you may pretend to yourself that it is not well suited for you, I will make the claim that it is, in fact, well suited for you. Because I'll make the claim that the universe is actually good. And I think that's a claim that people have made before on a general scale, but very few people apply to the physical world because of, tragedy. But it just so happens that tragedy is a temporary thing. It is a mortal thing. It's not something that is innate in the nature. It is not a persistent thing in the nature. And so, as it is not persistent, you must judge it by a different set of lenses in comparison with that which is, what we might call eternal. And so people who, or souls that exist in these sort of eternal realms, look at the physical world as a place where people go to grow, to change, to become a full soul. I really do believe that there is a physical layer to the soul, and we know that because we are physical beings living on Earth. And because of this, in order to be a complete soul, one must be physical, one must be spiritual, and one must be matured to the point where you have integrated a full body that is both part of the immortal worlds, or what appear to be immortal, and I'll get into that later, and the mortal. And so the two must become one. And the immortal worlds look at the mortal worlds with some level of jealousy. Not jealousy for the suffering, but jealousy because there is great meaning. And so because there is great meaning, because there is consequence, the divine flows through that which is in an active state of change. Whereas there is a divinity to the immortal worlds in as much as they are related to things that have meaning, which is to say that they live through you. and they live through your existence, both as you straddle the mortal and the immortal. And this seems like a contradiction, but it really is not, because humans are used to separating things out and pretending that somehow there is good and there is evil, there's black and there's white, there's light and there's darkness, and that's how we interpret the world. But this is an illusion. We believe things to be a certain way because we experience them that way. But when someone enters the spiritual world and begins to have many experiences, I don't just mean one or two, I mean like hundreds, as I have had, you come to the realization that life is kind of like a game. But it's a game that has real consequences and real meaning. And what I mean to say by that is, you dictate the outcome of your soul. But any amount of change is risk, because you have the choice to change in a way that is unbeneficial, and that is, you have the ability to degrade by getting your priorities wrong. And people get their priorities wrong all the time. And so because of this, people get a little bit too obsessed with the suffering aspect of life. And they don't get the fact that they're making a choice, that they're here by choice, that they signed up for this. That doesn't mean they signed up for a specific experience, but they signed up for having a choice. And the trouble with choice is that it's something which is earned. And it's not earned through going along with the crowd and never sticking your head out and never taking a risk. It's earned through taking those risks. It's earned by being called a heretic. And people, obviously, because of suffering, do not want to pay the price of being a heretic. They want someone else to pay the price for them, which is where a lot of religions cleverly have found a way to control people, is because they make the claim that you don't have to take the risk and something else will do it for you, and you just have to kind of accept the priors and just float with everyone else and do the thing you're supposed to do. In reality, you're giving up control, you're giving up autonomy, you're giving up freedom, you're giving up choice for something, whatever that benefit happens to be. And a lot of people do that. So anyways, I'm kind of ranting, and that's kind of what the purpose of this channel is, so I'm not too worried about that. But the point I want to get to is that in context to the universe, in context to breaking free from the shell, as a newborn chick, you must accept risk. And when you are in good condition spiritually and you're in touch with your soul because you prioritize it, this is very important, prioritize it, you can enter a state of meditation where you think about what it means to be you, where you forget about the physical body and you embrace that true divine nature of the soul, that energy, and you enter a state of bliss. And this bliss reminds you that the world is temporary, that you've chosen this, that it really is up to you and what you decide to prioritize in your life, and that your soul and you're trying to develop. And if you are developed, you're already a developed soul, you probably are here to share the world with other people because you care, because you want to experience love, because you want to connect with other people. And you need to understand that this is key to moving forward, because you're going to have bad experiences in life. And it's this element, this connecting with one's soul, that allows you to overcome all that.